What is the coolest thing about your mom? She used to put my brother and I in the backseat and do donuts in an empty parking lot when it snowed. One of many awesome things. Edit for clarity. When I say donuts, I mean spinning the tires of a rear-wheel drive car, then making the car go in circles. I have eaten donuts with my family as well. Note, the grammar error will stay. My mom was an RN back in the day when HIV/AIDS was a new, unknown, deadly epidemic. She chose to work with these patients, even though it was considered a death sentence back then. Also, she makes itchin' Swedish pancakes and will always make sure your glass is half full. Edit. Holy it. Just woke up with an awful hangover and saw that this became my top post ever. Such a proud daughter. Lots of you asked some questions, so I'll just answer here. This is her recipe for Swedish pancakes. RN stands for registered nurse. She worked as one from the mid-70s to the late 90s. Luckily she never got the virus. I meant that she likes to make sure you always have a drink. My username is a lyric from a Built to Spill song. Thanks all. I will call her tonight and tell her that the internet sends their appreciation. She really is an awesome lady. So proud to call her my mom. She's hilarious. One of my favorite stories. My dad and his friend thought they saw a UFO, so they went outside to look at the sky. They were outside for maybe 10 minutes. During that time my mom set the clocks forward a few hours. When they came back inside she acted upset and said they had been gone for hours. My dad and his friend totally freaked out. Thought they got abducted in it. Edit. I'm so happy my top comment is now about my mom. She's such a nice person, and I love her so much. She takes care of me. I have cancer and she is at my house almost every day helping me and my family. This includes cleaning, cooking, refereeing my older kids and chasing after my 17-month-old. She loves me unconditionally and tries really hard to stay strong in front of me. My parents were teenagers when I was born. It was hard and they didn't have any support, but my mother never, ever let us feel like we were a burden to her, and she made sure we all knew how much she loved us. She's just also the kindest person I have ever known. When I was 4 my father's cousin went to prison, leaving 2 sons without a home. My mother, at the ripe old age of 21, didn't hesitate a moment in taking over care. She is the embodiment of her favorite phrase, help as much as you can, as often as you can. Edit. Thanks so much for the love everyone. I told my mom that a bunch of people on the internet thinks she's wonderful. She just laughed and then asked me if I remembered to put in my storm windows because it was getting cold. On a side note, I am very pleased with the amount of armadillos I have received. She grew up without a mom. Her father neglected her. She met my dad while he was in college, got pregnant and was married. She had 3 children before 21. She winged our whole childhood and always doubted if she was doing the right thing, loving us too much or not enough, being too lenient or being too strict. The coolest thing is, despite not having any female role model, she mothered us and our friends. All of her children are fully grown and adore her. Our friends adore her. She's mothered anyone who needs mothering despite not having a mother of her own. She is Batman. My mom is 74 years old. About 5 years ago a big mugger put a knife to her throat while she was in a self-serve car wash. She told him her purse was in the car. He reached in and she slammed the door closed on his leg. Then she hit him on the head with the wash wand, screamed and ran like hell. Cops caught him a few minutes later limping down the street. Ran away from my abusive grandmother and aunts when she was 14. Used to race cars for pink slips. Huge fan of metal music. Most recently has beaten cancer twice, had spinal surgery 3 times, brain surgery for the 4th time, and reconnected and forgave her family. I love my mom. Update. I'm glad this is now my top rated comment and not the one about Chad Kroger's taint. She knows Hapkido, Jiu-Jitsu and Judo. About 17 years ago, we were walking home from one of her classes. She was a single mother at the time, so I would go with her and play with the other kids. Her sensei, or what have you, had given her some nunchucks a couple weeks prior and she had always brought them to class with her to stay an hour late with him and practice. So here we are, 10 years old me and 34 years old mother, roughly the same height, walking down the street after dark. Two guys cross the street to come our way and ask my mother for a cigarette. She doesn't smoke. One of the guys pulls a knife and asks for her purse instead. I'll never forget what happened. Cool as a ducking cucumber in an ice bucket, she gently pushes me back. She proceeds to grab the guy's wrist and twist the absolute duck out of it, causing him to drop the knife. As she kicks it away, the other guy starts to reach for her and she knocks his hand away and open palms him right in the mouth parts. She snatches the nunchucks out from behind her G and in the span of about 6 seconds, both dudes are on the ground, trying desperately to crawl away. She bangs on the door of a nearby bar. Friend was a bouncer and always hangs within 5-10 feet of the door, and tells him to call the police. My 5'2" mom beat the it out of 2 wannabe thugs and then made me a grilled cheese. On an unrelated note, I've never seen my mother and Bruce Lee in the same room. Suo. Edit. At 22 years old, I took my mother and step arsehole out for a night on the town at IU. Id Hill and I had a few too many drinks. She swept my feet out from under me. I'm 6'4". Back then probably 210. Like she was trying to wriggle a rock out of her shoe. I was on my back, in the middle of a fairly crowded restaurant in downtown Bloomington. Everyone snickered but no one would question my mother. She once gave Chuck Norris a fake number. Double edit. Shout out to Chet in North Carolina for teaching her those moves and potentially hitting that. Had you not, we may have been stabbed. It. Triple edit. Back in Morrisville, NC, she raised full-blood timber wolves. Over our years, we had 3 of them. Jasmine, Gromit and Sir Hobbs. Hobbs because he was born with a deformation in his rear left leg but eventually was able to walk properly and eventually hop over the 9-foot fence surrounding their play area. Gromit was killed when lightning struck the satellite dish we had rigged as a bath for them. Jasmine was bit by a rabbit skunk that also bit my white husky Blue and they both had to be put down. All these ducking memories flooding back. I had to get 12 rounds of rabies shots in my stomach because Blue bit me when I tried to comfort him. Duck rabies. She was a black belt in karate 4th dan by the age of 14, the youngest black belt in England at the time. Also, according to that old meter joke, she was at Wembley Stadium in 1986. Edit. Cool pictures and informational fixing. Here's my mum's association grading book and licenses. She was born in 1964. This means that she was actually 2nd dan by the age of 14. I'll start by mentioning the most uncool thing about my mom. The only really uncool thing about her, even if it wasn't her fault. She died when she was 51 years old. Having got that out of the way, here are the coolest things about my mom. She said duck this and got out of an unhealthy marriage back in the 1970s, when that was almost never done. She raised my brother and I to believe that being a racist was one of the worst things a person could be. Despite us living in a rural and very racist area, on the day she discovered my stepdad was beating on me, she ran him out of the house immediately and we were gone for good. Despite being a single mom with 2 kids and working full-time as a school teacher, she managed to get her master's degree and became a counselor working with at-risk youth, and somehow did so without us feeling neglected. After being treated for cancer, she took up running marathons and high-elevation mountain climbing. When her cancer came back, she never quit advocating for awareness, nor did she quit working with at-risk youth. I can't even begin to describe what a total, amazing badass my mom was. She was as imperfect as any other human being, but more than made up for it by who she was and what she did. Ducking superhero. Single mom. My dad is trash. Raised me by herself. We moved from Massachusetts to North Carolina in her beat to it Volvo station wagon with no reverse. Within the first few hours of arriving in Chapel Hill, my mother, all 120 pounds of white 28-year-old girl, had a job as a stonemason. She helped build all the stone walls around on campus. She pulled up to 2 old black fellas building a wall. Said, "Hey, I need a job." They laughed. Said, "Yeah, sure. Pick up that rock." And she did. She bought a house, a nice one, put herself through nursing school, all without much help from our wealthy extended family. We weren't Christian enough, and managed to raise my crazy ass at the same time. She is the most profoundly powerful person I have ever encountered in my entire life. And now she has hand tattoos, works from home for $90k. and smokes a bunch of weed. I love my mama. When she was a cadet at West Point, she got to go to Air Assault School. The last event of Air Assault School is a 12-mile ruck march, 35-pound pack, full uniform, carrying rifle, etc. There was a huge group of guys from the 101st Airborne Division there that were all doing the march together, acting all cool and tough, and she beat all of them. She later went on to commission and fly helicopters for 5 years. My mom is a truck driver who rides motorcycle and does woodwork. My dad is an accountant. My mom was like Kitty from that 70s show except without the drinking problem. All the neighborhood kids called her mom and my mom's house was the duck-in place to be. So, my dad knocked my mom up when they started dating while my father was finalizing his divorce from his cheating soon-to-be ex-wife. Dad went back to his wife for a short time and was barely in my life until I was 15 because I wasn't a hassle to take care of anymore. My mom has basically taken care of me almost entirely by herself for most of my life. I'm 21 now. Moved out at 19. When I was really young, her dad watched me so she could work and go to school full time. But the degree never panned out. She's never had a job that's paid more than $14 an hour. Usually it was $8.11. Had student loan debt from college throughout her entire life that her mother promised to take care of when she went to college. She never did. That amounted to more than $50K and has never been able to pay bills in full because, until I was 15, my dad was giving her maybe $250 a month in unofficial child support. She managed to fund a lot of it for me at cost of her own comfort and probably things that we really needed. She's sacrificed a lot and still isn't doing too well in terms of things financially. Not to mention the only reason she's alive is because her mother had a UT and she was born premature by 2 months. Turns out she had what's called a cervical teratoma that would have killed her if she went to term. Somehow, in 1968, a group of 7 or so doctors excised a tumor that weighed more than her from her chest. She was supposed to be mentally challenged and or die by the time she was 10 because they removed almost her entire thyroid. But she's still alive and kicking at 47. Oh, yeah. And she's a Christmas baby. I asked her. She said that she's ghetto fabulous. She really wants to help out people that aren't her children. Grew up with a father with severe depression. My mom gave me stability. She also learned everything she could about ADHD when I was diagnosed in 4th grade. Became my biggest advocate. She holds a seat on the council for our Native American tribe. She is why I can pass my culture on to my children. She's a brilliant writer. She and my father have written several successful musicals together, one of which is currently on 3 Norwegian cruise line ships. She also recently self-published her first novel, A Gazillion Little Bits. It's a post-apocalyptic story set in Manhattan in the 23rd century. Also the funniest woman I know. Edit, a comma. My favorite story I tell people to this day. She was a single mother. The year was 1999. I was 15. She loaned some money from her sister for plane tickets and some cash and left with just some suitcases and myself to Miami from Slovakia. After a week she couldn't find a job and hotels drained most of her cash. We sat into a Greyhound and headed for Memphis TN where her friend was. Sat on the damn cold ass bus for 36 ducking hours. Just her and her 15-year-old. On that bus we socialized. We met 2 18-year-olds that were on way home from juvie for burning down a school bus. They were very interested how much is a gram of weed in Slovakia. I didn't know at the time. Also met some Czechs. They said halfway over Atlantic, on their way to Florida, there was a thick smoke in the plane coming from the baggage compartment. They were really excited to see a tornado in real life and go to a black church to see a choir sing. Celebrated the millennium in Memphis. At one point she took me to a music festival on the shore of the Mississippi River. My first live music event. It had a hovering cloud above everyone of ganja smoke so thick that you can cut it. After a year she saved up some cash. Rented a U-Haul, filled it with stuff we accumulated. Bolted her 86 Honda that she bought for $400 on the back with a car trailer and drove all the way to San Diego, which was her favorite city. I live here now. She's moved to Oregon couple months ago. I'm 31 now and started a life in different countries handful of times on my own. But I would never consider a move like she had the nerves and balls to do with a kid that just hit puberty. Props mom. Love you. Edit. Couple details. Well, she died yesterday and is now laying down in one of the morgue refrigerators at around 36F, so I guess she's really damn cool. But for serious, she had a great sense of humor and would laugh at my stupid jokes and not get angry at me for telling them over and over again. That was cool. Edit. God, I really appreciate the kind words. Guys, I'm not crying or anything yet, because it really hasn't hit me yet, but I'm happy that I got a chance to know her and that she was my mom. I'm thankful to whatever process, whether it was a god or just chance, that put me in her life and vice versa. She was a great woman who did a lot for me, and although I will miss her terribly, I would feel bad if I wished she was still here because she was in a lot of pain before she went. Thanks again for your kind words. Another thing that was really cool about her was how she trusted me. I told her everything. So if I was like I'm going out for the night with some friends, she would just give me a hug and tell me to be safe. She never chastised me for trying weed and taking sips of alcohol. She believed it was beneficial for me to just try the stuff and get it over with, and she was right. Okay, now I'm starting to cry. She's put up with my ridiculousness throughout the years and has been so kind and understanding. When I was 16 and decided to put red streaks in my hair and screwed up terribly because I did it myself, she didn't yell at me and instead laughed and said, "Whoa, you really ducked it up, didn't you?" When I was 17 and was going to pierce my lip with a safety pin, she offered to take me to get it done professionally so I would have less of a risk of infection. When I was 19 and I decided to paint the name of our band on the door of our garage for the flyer of a show we were playing, she didn't flip out on me and instead thought it was cool, and we kept it up until the city painted over it. When I was 20 and got arrested for shoplifting, she was my phone call from the police station. Her initial reaction was not to scream and scold, but instead assured me that she was on her way. These are just a few examples, but I love her, and even though she had her faults as a parent sometimes, the fact that she put up with all the dumb it I used to do is pretty cool. She loves kids. She and my dad adopted 7 out of 9 of us. She is the epitome of mom. All she wanted to ever do was be a mom. Stay at home, cook, clean, play with her kids, run errands. She just loved it. She has had some major health issues and scares, and not once has she even acted like she was sick. She is a strong woman. She lost my dad to ALS 6 years ago. She's afraid of being alone, but pushes through every day being the amazing mom and grandma. Knowing she isn't alone, I'm tearing up just typing this. If I can be just 1/16 of the mom she is to us, I'd be happy. When I was 6, my mom said to me, "Don't ever lie to me, and we'll never have any problems." And I've never lied to her from that moment on. I'm now 21, so the relationship I have with her is awesome. The coolest thing about her is how cool she is, I suppose. One of my favorite stories is when her and my dad went out to a bar one night and my mom got very drunk and she was not ready to go home yet. She kept begging my dad to go to a gay bar that she's always wanted to go to. So they went with their friends, a gay couple, and my mom danced for 3 straight hours. She was carried out of the bar at 2:30 AM by my dad and her friends because her feet were really sore. She's 55. There's a million of these stories, but yeah, she's very cool. My mom is kind of a badass. She had an alcoholic single-parent father, and she picked herbs, chopped firewood, hunt animals and climbed trees to get wild honey for money, and basically raised herself since age 6. She fought snakes and wolves, shanked a guy who tried to abuse her, all while not having shoes to wear till age 10. She was tough as a nail. Her village headmaster would not let her leave the village to go to a school out of district, so she sold everything, then poured water all over the headmaster's electronics. Back in the 1970s when electronics were very expensive, slapped some money on his desk, then took the train and traveled China for months. It's very complicated, but basically without his sign-off she can never leave the village. She met a hospital executive on the train during the journey, just before her money was to run out. This lady took care of my mom's transfer documentation, and she went to work for her hospital, never to return to her village again. Then she taught herself English, scored the highest on her exams, got the opportunity to work in the UAE and USA. Now she works at a top hospital here. She's faced many hardships and always came on top. I'm very proud of her. My mom is a nurse, which might not sound badass, but is pretty goddamn badass. I've heard stories where she is on a gurney giving somebody CPR so they wouldn't duck and die. There are also loads of stories where she is the first one to run towards a disaster, including a kid choking in New Orleans and an unfortunate drunk driving accident in New Jersey. I got to witness it once. In Philly there was a multi-car accident where one of the cars flipped. We were driving by when it happened, not involved. My dad had barely applied the brakes when she hopped out of the car, yelled call 911 and ran to the flipped car to make sure everyone was okay. My mom has consistently saved people's lives. That's pretty ducking cool. She also had a burgeoning political career which unfortunately went nowhere because she ran for state rep as a Democrat in 2010, a Republican heavy year. She is very underappreciated for her badassery. Edit also. She's an athlete. I remember when we were kids, my brother, our friends, and myself were at the park with her. She was teaching us all how to play baseball. A couple of garbage men drive in their truck and start taunting her, saying it like girls can't play baseball. So, from home plate, she threw the ball up to herself, whacked it, and hit the garbage truck. It shut them up, and we were all cheering our asses off. Edit 2. I also want to point out that my mom grew up in a family with 6 boys. She essentially raised the younger 3 since both her parents were alcoholics. All of my uncles will tell you that they're 6 feet tall despite the fact that my mom, who peaked at 5 feet 11, by no means short, was taller than all of them. My mom is 50 years of age and took up pole dancing. Not stripping though, more acrobatic work. She's incredibly good at it and is in the best shape of her life. I admire her so much. She came from nothing and built a ducking empire. She was raised in a house with 5 kids on the equivalent of welfare in the UK to working as a CEO earning a 7-figure salary in Canada on her own. My dad's a stay-at-home husband. I admire the it out of my mom. My mom went to the state capitol to stand with Wendy Davis. She doesn't even live in Austin. She drove 1.5 hours there, and then drove home afterwards. She did it in part because I couldn't go due to my work schedule. I have so much respect for her. She kicked all my friends' asses at beer pong, and near the end of one of the games she looks across the table at their 1 cup and looks down at her own 6 and says, and I quote, "Hey, I am getting a little thirsty. Can you help me out?" She fully supported me but allowed me the freedom to fail and learn from it. She genuinely spent 30 years of her life bending over backwards to give her 4 children the best life she could possibly give them with the minimal resources our family had. Endless hours driving to schools across town from each other just so we could be where we want to be. Chaperoning every field trip. Going to every concert, game and award ceremony. Genuinely wanting nothing more than to give her children the best life possible. Keeping a smile and positive attitude through all of it. My mother is genuinely a saint, and I thank her often for it. It's still not enough to repay her though. She once threatened to beat the it out of a teacher, my preschool teacher, who she caught tying my left hand to my chair so I wouldn't write with the devil's hand. Said teacher was also a nun. TLDR, mom threatens nun. My mom's a history teacher. She doesn't have great social skills outside of the classroom, but she somehow makes it all come together in her lectures. Aztec ritual slaughter? You will sit there, enraptured, as she goes through all the gut-pulling details. The Russian Revolution? She'll have you laughing hysterically as she tells you about Rasputin's assassination. She can make you feel bad about the Spanish-American War or have you cringing in disgust as she describes Hitler's relationship with his niece. My mom isn't great at real life. You know, the entire those who can't teach bullet. But regardless, for those few hours during the week that she's lecturing, my mom is a force of nature. And that nature is world history educating the it out of you. My mom is awesome. She kicked cancer's ass while recovering from a heart attack and is still the funniest person I know. She makes beautiful artwork, writes poetry, all of which she's too afraid to sell or publish. And I can talk with her like a best friend. The epitome of non-judgmental. She's developing a set of methods to teach people active reading, grammar and logical thinking that can be affordable. There are a lot of these here in Mexico, but they're obscenely expensive. Also, she's developing instructive games about language, math, logic, chemistry, human rights, you name it. She didn't even finish college. Her experience for that comes from raising a bunch of sons and raising us pretty well, if I'm allowed to brag, while being a stay-at-home mom. She tried to improve the world by educating us, and once she got back to the work market she has been doing even more of that. She's incapable of giving up. She has been dealt a not so easy life. My dad is a good man and a great father, and not a particularly bad husband, but he did neglect her and made her hate herself. She hit rock bottom of self-loathing and lack of self-care and bounced back to a life of hope and effort. And then she's just kept going and going like the Energizer Bunny. Seriously, she's the strongest and kindest person I've ever known. Also, she's my mom. I'm sure this will get buried, but my mom bought a photo lab business when she was young and turned it into a profitable small business. Endured an abusive marriage and got out. She ran a business and raised me on her own in an affluent town. We were not. She never finished college and spouts pseudoscience bullet now. But damn if she isn't one of the strongest women I know. I respect and love her greatly, even if I can't stand more than a week with her as an adult. I feel like a itty son sometimes for doing my own thing completely without her, but when I have the ability to live in excess, I aim to do everything I can for her. That she decided against naming me Ariel. I'm a dude. Thanks, Ma. She is so smart that it's actually disgusting. She knows everything about medicine and other medical stuff. If I didn't have her in my life I would have had many weird visits to the doctor. It has come to the point where even my friends ask her for help. Example, when my friend thought he got an STD, he went straight to my mom. Didn't even talk to me about it. My mom is my superhero. My mom speaks 4 languages. She's super smart and incredibly absent-minded, which is pretty funny. Today I called to ask her if there were any Mexican surnames starting with the letter W, and she gave me a very detailed lesson about the lack of W in the Spanish language. Also, she takes care of my dad. He's terminally ill and he requires a ton of attention and care. She is truly an angel and I'm lucky to be hers. She is an incredible woman. She grew up in a family that would have been grateful to meet the poverty line. The day she turned 18 she joined the army. After boot camp she was shipped off to Germany where she met my dad, also in the army. The day she landed, they were married a year and a half later, and had me the next year. She kept up with an infant and a career while using the GI Bill, or something similar, to put my dad through law school. She's worked her way up, going through a deployment to Afghanistan and being stationed away from her family a few times. She went back to school and got her master's degree 4 or so years ago. She's retiring next year as a lieutenant colonel, and she's only in her early 50s. She taught me how to use power tools, how to run a household, and how to be a woman. Her strength is something I'll look up to every day, and she is my best friend.